somebody had to do it. Somebody, one person in the country, had to actually read the Liz Cheney book. People love to buy it. Actually, it's the #1 best-selling book in the country, but nobody actually reads it. I have, and let me tell you something. It is a silly, weird, creepy book, and this just might be a threat to democracy, actually. Is they like to use that phrase, Liz and her friends, they're the threat. Oh, by the way, they're also incredibly boring at times. You tell me, did anybody run out and buy this book after watching Liz?
It was just obvious that we cannot survive as a nation if we have a president who's going to unravel the foundations of the republic. He himself is trying to unravel democracy. People need to take seriously and literally what he's saying, which is that he would, in fact, unravel our democracy, potentially terminate the Constitution. It's a risk we can't take. Once we get through this election cycle and we defeat Donald Trump, I think there's clearly a huge amount of work that has to be done to restore, to right the ship of our democracy.
Oh, my God. Yeah, she's not compelling. She's not a good book salesperson. We've heard her say this stuff a million times before, but the establishment takes care of its own, and they know how to move books. She was everywhere, right? On this show, that show, every single show they have, even conservative media, by the way, and they weren't nearly tough enough on her. There are extraordinary problems with this book, and extraordinary problems with Liz. Before I get to those, they wouldn't actually let her read the book. They understand that Liz puts people to sleep.
I want to read a part of your book that really stuck out to me. You said, and you've touched on a little bit of this, certainly Donald Trump would run the U.S. government with acting officials who are not.
See how they don't let her actually read her own book? She's sitting right there.
A section, a quote from your book, Oath and Honor. Today, none of us can tell if the story...
They do all the reading for her. All right, I don't blame them, actually, on that point, because when Liz reads her book, it does put people to sleep. I have the audio version as well.
This is the story of the moment when American democracy began to unravel. It's the story of the men and women who fought to save it.
It goes on for 12 hours of this stuff, all right? It is an excellent sleeping pill. But if you do get through it and you read it critically, you realize how manipulative, how dishonest, and yeah, I'd even say dangerous this book is. So Liz, of course, is the daughter of Dick, the former vice president of the United States. She has a lot in common with her father because her father, when he was vice president, famously exploited September 11, 2001 to accrue more power than the executive government actually warranted in the Constitution. Spying on people without a warrant here domestically, enhanced interrogation, also known as torture, a lot of things that just we let them get away with. And they used 9/11 as a pretext. Now, Liz is trying to do kind of the same thing with January 6th, using January 6th as a pretext to cancel a political movement, MAGA, and cancel Donald Trump. That's what she's doing. I think she learned it from her father. The mistakes and the omissions, well, I want to start with something that's near and dear to my heart, okay? What happened to Ashley Babbitt should not have happened. Now, this is an important moment in the book, and I'm going to read from it. Remember, she's on the January 6th committee. She should know all this stuff. How does she put it? Put that quote up for me. 3 members of uniformed Capitol Police were forced to withdraw, leaving only a single plainclothes officer standing between the violent mob and members of Congress. Were forced to withdraw. This is the moment she's talking about.
Oh, I see people out there get hurt. I don't want to I just... The whole country hates I want you to go home. Go. Let's go. Get this...
You saw that. I saw that. Did you see those cops walk away and you see them standing over there like they're on a coffee break? Were they forced to withdraw? No, they weren't. Ashley Babbitt is about to be killed. Here comes Officer Byrd, Lieutenant Byrd, and he's about to shoot Ashley Babbitt with police officers standing right there. They weren't forced to withdraw. Let me see those guys against the wall one more time. Forced to withdraw. That did not happen They were not forced to withdraw. They chose to withdraw for reasons we still don't know, because the January 6th committee was a farce. There are some other things here. Some are serious, some not so serious, but this bothered me as well. Although Chris Miller had briefly been placed in charge of the National Counterterrorism Center, he had never managed anything close to the scale of the DoD, Department of Defense. He was quite possibly the least qualified nominee to become Secretary of Defense since the position was created in 1947. Talking about the acting Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, appointed in November of 2020, and this guy was totally qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. He had military experience, special operations experience. He actually fought in wars. She went out of her way to portray this guy as in over his head. You know who was in over his head? Dick Cheney. Zero military experience. And he went to the Pentagon, not after getting out of the military, but getting out of Congress. He was a congressman for 10 years before becoming Secretary of Defense. For her to say that about Chris Miller is a disgrace. And the people he appointed, his closest advisors back in 1989 and 1993, Pete Williams, Paul Wolfowitz, civilians, guys with zero military experience. And that brings me to Kash Patel. You know Kash, great American, a lawyer, a patriot, and an expert, worked for Devin Nunes. This is what she says about Kash Patel. Kash Patel was appointed on November 10th to serve as Chris Miller's chief of staff. As far as I knew, Patel had no military experience. He had never served in any capacity at the Defense Department. But Patel was a Donald Trump loyalist. The president had reportedly attempted to appoint Patel to several other positions throughout the government, including as deputy CIA director and deputy FBI director. Here's the important part. Only to meet strong resistance, including threats of resignation, from the agency professionals who would have had to work with Patel. This is interesting, and I have to emphasize it. This is a tool of the swamp, a tool of the deep state and their allies. The threat of resignation. You know, we elect people, we think they're going to run the government. No, a lot of unelected people are there, and they threaten to leave, resign en masse sometimes if the elected people tell them what to do. It's wrong. The other thing, very revealing, Liz Cheney keeps talking about all the threats she was getting from MAGA. Totally overstated, lacks specificity as well. But you have to remember this, when they get threatened, which are wrong, it's really wrong to threaten anybody, got to make that clear, but they actually like it, gives them status and prestige.
They, level death threats against me, my staff, my family.
Calling me and threatening to kill my family, and oftentimes I get these calls.
I'm frankly just tired of these threats coming anonymously to us. Recently, someone said that they were going to rape and kill my children, and they were using the language that Kevin McCarthy was using.
Right, Kevin McCarthy. The English language, nobody should be threatened, but they like it because then they can get security detail. They can get people protecting them. And Liz Cheney, here she is with some, I think these are Secret Service members, right? She put this picture in her book. The message is, look how important I am. Hey, wouldn't you like to be driven to work by a bodyguard, right? That's what they want. They really do. And Kevin McCarthy, man, look, I'm no big Kevin McCarthy fan at all, but she is unbelievably mean and snide and so disrespectful and never acknowledges that maybe Kevin, well, he's a politician. He has to negotiate. We all know he changes his mind. But she was so contemptuous of him. Kevin this and Kevin. Interestingly, when Nancy Pelosi shows up, she reveres Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi gives her a call on the phone, and let's see, she's in the cloakroom or someplace like that. I stepped into an empty office to take the call. Hello, Liz. Hi, Madam Speaker. It's always Madam Speaker. She is enamored with Democrats or anybody who's not elected. Very, very interesting when you look at it that way. Mike Johnson, the new speaker, back then he wasn't speaker, but I don't know, this is how kind of Liz sees the world. If Liz doesn't agree with you, you must be wrong. Here's what she said about Mike Johnson during the whole election discussion. Mike repeatedly held himself out as a constitutional lawyer. I know many constitutional lawyers, including many conservative constitutional lawyers. Not a single one of them agreed with Mike. Instead of going to court, right, we'll just, her friends, which ones agree with Mike or not. When you are Liz Cheney and you grew up on the lap of presidents like Gerald Ford, here she is in her book, a picture, you start to think that you and your friends are probably better than you and your friends. Know what I mean? Something very anti-democratic about this. Just like the January 6th hearings, they were disgusting in so many ways. No real cross-examination. You know what she said? Well, if Bill Barr was cross-examined, he would have done a good job. Let us see that. Let the people figure that out. She's like, our witnesses were so good, they could not have cross-examined them and scored any points. It doesn't work that way. And then there's the matter of Caroline Edwards, the Capitol Hill cop. You know, the testimony of Officer Caroline Edwards stirred the same anger and resolve that had motivated me since I sat in the House chamber on January 6th. These members of our Capitol Police had sacrificed for each of us and for the same Constitution we all swore to uphold. Not a word about the massive security failure and who knows what else it might have been on January 6th, huh? Caroline Edwards, all these cops, political leaders using them and hiding behind them. Listen.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that as a police officer, as a law enforcement officer, I would find myself in the middle of a battle.
She bumped her head that day. Police officers are shot and killed way too often in America. What did she think she was signing up for when she joined the police department? You never have to fight a riot. You're not a crossing guard. We all went through Black Lives Matter summer, right? We saw what can happen. We saw what happened to cops. Back to the book, the Liz Cheney book. What does she say here? Oh, yeah. One officer came to her and said, ma'am, I fought in Iraq, and I have never encountered the violence I did out there today. This is on January 6th. Then he repeated the point to make sure I understood. It was medieval and bloodthirsty. It was unfathomable that this was happening in the United States of America. Okay, worse than Iraq. I have to show you those two-star cops, Fanone, Hodges, and the rest. Remember those guys who testified? Yeah, I had a great time. The 3 of the 4 have book deals, I believe. Look at what how they appeared less than 10 days after January 6th. He looks very spry and uninjured. Same goes for Hodges, who claimed that his head was crushed. Let's take a look what real heroes look like, okay? That they mentioned Iraq in the book. This is what somebody who's wounded in war looks like. It's tough. It's tough, right? People have been severely burned, lost limbs, and they exaggerate January 6th to make it think it's like this. It really bothers me, and I hope it bothers you. All right, Liz claims to know history really, really well. This is how she starts off her book. Let's actually do the audio version.
For my parents, who taught me to love America and read her history.
And read her history. Very pompous sounding, right? Very, very pompous. So back to the book on January 6th. You know, what happened, that Confederate flag, some guy was, I didn't think this was a good moment at all. That shouldn't have happened. But this is what Jamie Raskin says to her, and they have a little exchange. As I sat back down, Raskin was still opposite me, looking down at his phone. Liz, he said, there is a Confederate flag flying inside the United States Capitol. All right? I couldn't believe it. That hadn't happened even during the Civil War. My God, Jamie, what have they done? And I thought to myself, you know what? It has not happened, it's never happened at the Capitol. And in about 90 seconds, I found about 10 examples of it happening in the Capitol. Yeah. Hey, just a couple of years ago, they had the South Carolina flag that was flying in the Capitol. And here's a scene at the White House with Confederate flags and President Coolidge, right? They took these flags all over Washington, D.C. that day. It was part of some sort of reconciliation anniversary project. I don't know, but Liz even gets her history wrong. Much more to come. And the very strange and dangerous thing she did with former secretaries of defense. Can you imagine snapping your fingers and getting 10 former secretaries of defense to do your bidding? She pulled that off. I'll be right back.